Michael, Crossland, thanks for opening your doors here, brother.
Great to have you here, Adam.
Of course, man. Sunday afternoon, here we are.
Special.
It's beautiful, man. What I love about your story is you've impacted millions, and I think when millions get impacted by a story, it's all about changing their perspective, the vision, themselves. And I think it's really important, like on this podcast today, to really unpack your story because there's always people that haven't heard your story. And I love to support that in every single way, man.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate
Of
it.
So take us back to your story in terms of like when everything started for you in your life and maybe what happened at the beginning.
It's been it's funny, like I always say, I feel like I'm the luckiest person on the face of the earth. And a lot of people think that someone becomes very lucky because they've had a really cruisy life or a really great life or a really easy life. But I think that those that are truly lucky, those that truly live a wonderful life, are those that deal with obstacles that get thrown at them greatly and powerfully and effectively and authentically and with great humility and kindness and love for life. And I feel as though because of all the challenges that I've gone through in my life, that I've lived a really wonderful life. And for those that have had a very easy life, I almost feel sorry for them as opposed to those that have had a real tough upbringing. So for me, my journey, I guess, or the struggles for me really began when I was 11 months of age. I was diagnosed with an incurable cancer of the central nervous system, stage 4 neuroblastoma. Chances of survival were less than 4%, and it was basically pack up the doors and go home. But like everybody listening and like you and I know so well, it's not looking at the glass being 96% empty. It's about looking at the glass being 4% full. And for me and for my family, that's the way we approach these challenges. Chemo for 3 years, 9 days on, 3 days off, 9 days on, 3 days off. And I was only reflecting the other day with a friend, and it's something that I don't share on stage, is like families that face great adversity and darkness, you only see what happens when they're at the hospital. But for me, it was like on the 9th day, just to show a visual representation, on the 9th day, my mum and I would sit at the end of the bed and we'd hold hands and we'd pray that my white cells were high enough. Because if my white cells were high enough, we were allowed to get the 11-hour train ride back to Coffs Harbour to be able to see my dad and my 3 older sisters for a day and a half, for then to get back on that 11-hour train ride back to Sydney to start chemo again. And, back in those days, we didn't have the drug that prevented us from vomiting. So as soon as you would have chemo, you would just constantly vomit. And I think, like a lot of people say that I'm so brave and I'm so courageous. But, as you know, I've realized that it's those that are outside the bed that hurt so much more. And, my mom, man, she was the one that had courage. She was the one that had strength. She was the one that never quit on me. And even when we go into the fact that the treatment didn't work and the tumor took over half my body, it was growing up into my aorta, it was wrapping around my spine, growing up into my heart. They had to trial the drug. They trialed us on 25 people, and sadly 24 of them died within 90 days. And the side effects were horrific, burnt from head to toe. They would put us in baths full of ice, trying to burn our brains from frying. And as now incredibly fortunate man who's a father, I pray that I never ever have to walk a moment, let alone years, in my mum's shoes. She was away from my dad and my 3 older sisters for nearly 5 years, and that's one heck of a battle. And but she never quit on me, and I'm so grateful that I never quit on me either. And I think many people listening would be able to resonate that I was only ever told what I would not be able to do. I was told I'd never be able to go to school. I was told I'd never be able to play sport. I'd be a housebound baby. If I reached my teenage years, it'd be a miracle. But as you know, we believe in miracles.
Yeah,
and
right.
For me to be able to go to school, graduate high school, go to college, play baseball in America, represent this amazing country that we all call home, to now be sitting here, in my 40s, when I was told I wouldn't make my teenage years. As you know, I almost didn't make my teenage years, had a heart attack when I was 12, and that was pretty scary. But, it was, it's been a wild ride, and I am just so immensely grateful to be able to enjoy the life that I get to live now. And all the battles, which I'm sure we're going to unpack, have certainly led me to the man I am today.
Powerful, Michael. Do you remember those moments when you were 12? Do you remember those moments like vividly, or is it more through reflection and speaking to your mum that you can kind of bring those moments back?
No, I remember it like it was yesterday. Yeah, there was 4 doctors on my right, my mum holding my hand on my left. I went to take a deep breath in, and the pain that I felt in my chest is something that no 12-year-old should ever have to feel. It was crippling. It was the worst pain I've ever felt in my life, and then everything just went black. And what was amazing about that moment, you know, I learned, and I think we all do, we learn such valuable lessons from darkness and from pain and suffering. And for me, you know, I remember I was sitting there, and I was a bit of a loner at school, you know, especially year 7 and 8. I went from a school of 22 kids to a high school of 1,200. I didn't really know anybody, and it was a real tricky, you know, transition from primary school to high school. And I remember I had this you know, sickness, and I was in hospital for such a long time, and recovery was, you know, was really tough. And I got this card in at the hospital, and it said "Get well soon." And I opened it up, and there was all these amazing messages from all these people at school, like even girls. Like, girls knew who I was. I was like, "Hey, I didn't even know girls knew I existed." Yeah, this was incredible. And it just shows you how your brain is so focused to the negative things in our world. There was all these beautiful things, and then there was one comment. I still remember it so clearly because it crippled me that moment, and it said, "I hope you die, Steve." And it was almost like every message on that card just completely dissolved. There was only one phrase on that card. There was no "Get well, can't wait to see you soon, hope everything's going well, look forward to seeing you back at school." All it said was, "Hope you die, Steve." And it really smacked me, and I realized then that, you know, a few things. One, no one in your life is ever going to tell you what you can do. They'll never tell you what you can't. But your value does not decrease based on one's inability to see your worth. If our whole world is tied up based on what other people think of us, then we will never be able to move forward, make a decision, make a choice without the validation of other people. And back then I was being validated by everybody because I didn't value myself. And now I reflect back on that moment, I'm like, man, that was such a powerful lesson for me. Because I realized no matter how much kindness I bring to the world, no matter how much love I try and give to the world, there's not every person on this planet that's going to like me. And I need to be okay with that, because I need to know my truth. And if I know my truth and I know the lane that I live in and the impact that I want to have, then the words of others no longer land.
Yeah.
And that is a really beautiful place to be.
Thanks for sharing, Mark. I was curious for myself, you know, when I was growing up, I got expelled from school, right? I was 2 broken families. And for me, when I went through everything in my life, I look back at it now and I reflect and I think, wow, that was like the pivotal moment for me of like who I am today. But when I was a kid, it was the hardest time. You know, like I was lonely. I craved connection. I craved validation from people that, you know, weren't giving me validation. And it's interesting, you know, for yourself, how were you as like a kid, Mark? Were you reflecting on what was happening as much? Or was it more just like everything was happening to you? Did you have these breakthroughs that you have now about reflecting on your situation?
Interesting question. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think that my dream as a little boy was to be normal. That's all I wanted. Yes, I wanted to play baseball in America, and yes, I wanted to make friends and all that sort of stuff, but my real deep vision for my life was to just be normal. I wanted to go to school. I wanted to make friends. I wanted to be able to walk down and not look different. You know, I had a bald head, and I had no eyelashes, and I had scabby skin. I had to wear bandages to school, and I had to sit on a nebulizer at school watching all the other kids play outside. And you know, I just long to be able to fit in. I think in the world we live in today, the more we strive to fit in, the more we stand out for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
The more we believe in ourselves, the more we are okay with who we are. I think that's when we stand out for all the right reasons.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time. It took me a long time to love myself. It took me a long time to value myself and invest in myself. And, you know, there was a lot of horrible things that happened in COVID. And, you know, I know there's lots of parts of the story that we need to get to, but that moment for me with COVID, it was wild. Speaking had exploded, and I didn't realize that when it all got taken away, you know, 68 events canceled overnight, my whole world had changed in a heartbeat. I wasn't allowed to go outside. I've only got one lung that works properly. I've got a low immune system. If you catch COVID, you're going to die. Like, this was, it was frightening for me. 11 months we were in lockdown for. We didn't leave the house for 11 months. But I think when you are almost forced into somewhat isolation, the walls get smaller, but you also have an opportunity to look inwardly. And that moment allowed me to look inwardly. And it taught me so much about myself. It taught me that I didn't need validation from others. I didn't need people to wrap their arms around me and pat me on the back. You know, it's amazing when you get on stage and you get a standing ovation and people make you feel amazing and they want to get photos with you and all that. But I realized that all of that for me was a need back then because I didn't love myself. Now it's just great joy when it happens.
Yeah.
But all I want is to make sure I can look in the mirror and go, you know what, I'm proud of the man you've become. I want to be a great dad. I want to be a great husband. I want to be a great son. And to do that, I need to invest in me and grow me and value me. And I'm just so grateful that looking back on those moments and with reflection, I can see the transformation. It took me a long time.
Yeah,
it took me 30 or 40 years to get to a point where I was like, okay, I'm just okay with being who I am. I've got to stop trying to be everybody else and just start to be me.
Yeah, yeah. And growing up, right, like when your relationship with your mom, did you view those feelings with her back then in terms of like just being okay with it? Was it a peace? Was it like a guilt? Was it a shame? Like how did you feel with like your mom in that whole situation growing up?
Just elaborate, in what situation?
Like for when you're like, example, when you're 12, like everything was happening. Like did you feel at any point like where she was like guilt or shame? Was it peace? Was it like wanting to be, like how would you feel back then?
Well, for me, I felt like I was a 12-year-old kid. I just wanted to be out. I didn't want her to tell me what I could do. I didn't want her to tell me what I could not do. I probably felt guilty. You know, I think I carried guilt for a long time. Now you ask me that, reflecting, you know, not only did I carry survivor guilt, you know, I can't imagine my mum telling the doctors that they needed to continually inject this drug in that killed everybody for 18 months when she sat there and watched them zip up bodies in body bags and wheel them out because of the drug that she's told the doctors to continue with me, you know. And we get frustrated because the fuel light comes on when we're in a rush. So to have that feeling is difficult one, but also to have the feeling of guilt towards my sisters. You know, I took their mum away.
Yeah.
I felt that way. I felt that I took my sisters away from their mum. I potentially impacted the relationship between my mum and my dad because they were scared every day that their son was going to die. They couldn't be around each other. They couldn't love on each other. They couldn't lead a normal life because of me. But then I finally got to a point where I was like, it was me, but it wasn't because of any choices or decisions that I made. So how can I carry that weight? How can I carry that burden? And it's amazing when you start focusing on living in the now and making sure your head's firmly affixed to where your body's at. You let go of the fear of what might be tomorrow. You let go of the regret that could have been yesterday. We just focus on what is right now. And for me, when you lean into what is, then all the fear and the worry goes away.
Yeah. It was such a powerful story, Michael. I always look at it from different perspectives, you know, like for your mum, like what do you think that she was carrying when she was going through everything? Was that like a hard feeling? Of course it was, but was it more of a, not guilt, but shame, like she just felt a bit useless, like hopeless, she couldn't help you in that situation? Or was it more just trying to do everything she could to fix everything? Because I couldn't even imagine, like I don't have kids just yet, but being in that position, it's not easy. It's the hardest thing in the world to imagine.
Yeah, she's been the rock of the family. She's the one that never quitted. She's the one that always kept fighting. And her courage and tenacity is something that can't be measured on a scale, you know, which is so beautiful. But I realized, you know, when my son got unwell, it's the worst pain that you could ever describe to anybody about anything. And that fear and that uncertainty, if I didn't have my faith, I don't know how I could have managed through the darkness with my son.
What happened to your son?
So we were told we'd never be able to have kids. So that's when we opened an orphanage and a school overseas with our friends from Frontier Projects down in Haiti, where 316,000 people died in 2010 because of the earthquake. The school was open, 270 kids, and then we we walked past this little village, and inside there was this little orphanage, and there was this one little boy outside, not at the orphanage, but he was outside on the street, and he was eating some food out of a bin, and we found out that his mum and dad had died, and his brother had died, and he was he'd been living on the streets for 4 months just by himself, 8 years old. And so we grabbed him and we tried to find this orphanage, and we took him inside, and it was like this horrible, horrible scenes, like just no mattresses, no blankets, no food, nothing, but at least he had somewhere, and we introduced him, and, long story short, we ended up coming back to Australia. We raised a whole heap of money, went back, rebuilt the orphanage, 44 beautiful little babies. And then in 2017, I got diagnosed again in 2016, but in 2017, we were blessed with a miracle. We were blessed with our little Lockie boy, our son, and he was due to arrive into the world the end of February 2018, but on the 12th of December 2017, he was born, and he was 11 weeks premature. He was very, very unwell. He was taken away from us and put in intensive care unit level 3, where we couldn't hold him, we couldn't hug him. I'd been a dad for less than an hour, and I felt like a failure. And what was crazy about that time was that I lived at Ronald McDonald House for 4 years as a sick little boy. And then 30 years later, I was living at Ronald McDonald House with my own sick little boy. And then one night they told us that they think he has sepsis, and they told us that if he made it to the end of the week, it'd be a miracle. And we are so glad we leaned into that faith, because, I remember so clearly yelling at the doctor, just saying, you take my house, you take my car, you take everything that I own, but please don't take my little boy. We finally prioritize, what's important when we're in our darkest moments.
Yeah.
And that for me was the darkest moment that I've ever been to. And it gave me a renewed admiration and love and respect for my mum. And that moment of deep pain, I think, taught me more in those few months than I'd learnt in my entire life. And to have the great privilege of taking him home was, such a great blessing. And then to have our little terror Summer arrive into this world during COVID, man, from one extreme to another, the kindest, most sweetest, most humble little boy to this absolute fire truck human of a daughter, she is, she's incredible. And I am just so grateful to God for the blessings that he has continued to bring into my world. And, I realize that despite the challenges, I'm getting carried through those moments. I'm never alone.
I think it's so beautiful, Michael. I think it's beautiful where what your mum went through with you, you've also gone through with your son. It's like that deep reflection piece that I don't think many people can have, which I think is really beautiful. I think what's like that whole experience with your son, what did that teach you about fatherhood? Because, it's interesting, right? I think parents always do the best they can with what they have. And in my mind, I didn't grow up in the best way, but at the same time, I think everyone could be a warning or an example. And fortunately and unfortunately for me, they were a warning of what I don't want to become, right? But it's for yourself, right? Like going through everything you've gone through. What did that teach you about like fatherhood, about being a father in terms of everything, your son?
Something you touched on there that I think is really important to share is that often we strive to admire the traits in other people that we want to implement in our lives.
Yeah.
But I think just as important, we need to acknowledge the traits of others that we do not admire to ensure that we do not implement those traits in our lives. Yeah. And I think that's just as important. Yeah. I think maybe the opposite. Like, you taught me how not to be a certain way because I didn't want to walk the same shoes, the same path as you. And that is a great privilege to learn that. But for me, I think the lesson that has been taught through fatherhood with my son and my daughter is that there's a moment in your life that you no longer are in control of your heart. Like I never imagined that it would feel this way, but it's the most suffocating love and experience of your life. Yeah. It's like another human running around on this planet with my heart in their body. And as scary as that is, and as heartbreaking as that is, and as wild as that is, and as painful as that is, it is the most beautiful, the most incredible emotion and experience and gift that we could ever feel. And, you know, I know that, you know, we don't live forever.
Yeah.
But the moments that I get to live with my kids, you know, I am just so grateful. You know, I don't want to be healthy enough to walk my daughter to school. I want to be healthy enough to walk her down the aisle, because my approach to life is so different now, because I'm serving somebody that's far more important than me. You know, I think before I became a parent, I was the most important person in the world. And now I'm a parent, I am a distant third, potentially a distant fourth, because I love my wife so much. But then you've got to get the balance right too, because I know that I can't be a great husband, nor can I be a great dad if I'm not a great Michael.
That's right.
So to get that balance right, and that's why, you know, I do what I do to try and be as fit and as healthy as I can.
It's such a simple question, but it's really important. You know, like obviously my wife, there's a lot of reasons why I chose her and she chose me. And I think for yourself, obviously she's seen everything with you. But I like to ask the simple question is always the best. Like why her? Like why did you decide to marry a beautiful wife, Mel?
Yeah, similar to you, man. I'm sure she chose you.
Yeah.
Because my wife definitely chose me.
Yeah.
I am happy to say that I'm punching way above my weight. But she's, you know, it's an interesting story with my wife. We met when she was very young. You know, and it was like this soul connection that was more than just a fleeting moment of joy and a fun. It was something that was much deeper than that. And, you know, she went off into her world and I went off into my world, and 5, 6, 7 years later, our worlds came back together again. And what was amazing is the joy and the love that I had for her when we very first initially met, to the moment when we, you know, began to have a relationship, like that love and that flame was still the same. And, you know, I still say that I love her now more than what I did when we got married. I thought I couldn't love her more than the day we got married. And, you know, relationships are not easy. And yeah, we go through ups and downs and we all have our tough seasons. But to see her courage with our kids and her patience is remarkable. But also, like, there's been times like in 2016 when I got diagnosed and 4 tumors in the throat. They told me that Christmas may not be a possibility. I'm trying to get our affairs in order, so financially she's okay. I pumped out a book because I wanted to take care of her if I was to die. And now obviously I'm still here, and that book's done very well, and we donate all the money to charity. We don't keep any of that. But like, I look in that moment and I'm like, all right, I'm the guy in the hospital bed. I'm the guy that needs to push through. I'm the guy that needs to fight. But you imagine how helpless it must be.
Yeah.
You know, it's you know, there's that feeling of, man, that's not fair to have to walk in those shoes. And, you know, I hope I'm always the guy in the bed, because I don't want to be the person that has to leave and wait 5, 6 hours whilst the operation happens to come back and hope to God that my partner's still alive. And, you know, then there's that feeling of like, all right, I'd started to cope with, not so much cope, but think about what it might be without you. How who's going to do the lawns? Who's going to clean the pool? Who's going to do the hedges? Like, all those things you get in order. And then all of a sudden I come home and I'm just back to me. And she's like, well, whoa, like, this is really different. This is really hard.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I said, I'm grateful that God found my soulmate and then we found each other, because, you know, I wouldn't want to do these battles. I wouldn't want to play these cards. I wouldn't want to enjoy the abundance that we've been blessed with anyone else.
This times must be really challenging. These conversations must have been extremely challenging.
The one that was probably the toughest for me was in 2022 when I got sick again, and they found those 6 more in the throat. I remember so clearly, I was at the airport and I had my wife and my 2 beautiful kids giving me a cuddle. She knew where I was going, but my kids thought I was going to work. They thought I was going to Sydney for a talk. And how can someone get back in the car and drive home and behave like everything's okay? You know, I really lent into my faith in 2022. I had to surrender. I had to give up the fact that I was not in control.
Yeah.
And I wasn't praying for me, I was praying for her. I was praying for her as a mum and as a wife and as an amazing human to be able to cope emotionally, courageously, not just for herself, but for our 2 beautiful kids. And then to be able to come home was just the coolest. The kids are like, why are you celebrating? Why are you so happy? Where's the toys? When you go away for work, you usually bring home toys. You come home with a Band-Aid on your neck. Like, what's that all about? So it's just so beautiful and so grounding when you're surrounded with kids that tell you how it is. You know, I remember getting a haircut. I got to look good because Adam and his crew are in town. And my son says, did you get a haircut? And I was like, yeah, I did. And he's like, yeah, I liked it way more before you got it cut. And I was like, oh, okay, no worries. So it's, yeah, they're beautiful humans.
What do you think gave her the strength in those times?
Oh, man, that may be a question for her. But I know that she loves God and she loves Jesus. And, you know, I really mean it. Whether you're listening to this and you're a person of faith or not, there is a different way of looking at your life when you realize that you're not truly in control. And when you give up what you think is holding you back and you lean into what can propel you forward, it's an amazing life. And, you know, I know that my life continues to have challenges and ups and downs and hurdles, but, you know, it's a much easier life when you live your life free of fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With everything you've gone through, did you ever give up on God? Were you angry at God at any point of your life? Because everything you've gone through, it could be easy to be like, maybe he's not listening, maybe he's not hearing my prayers. Did it ever come to your mind?
Yeah, well, we spoke earlier today. You know, I haven't always been a man of faith, and there's been times where I've thought I was doing it on my own, and I thought I didn't need him because life was, you know, supposedly good, and I was making lots of money, and I had friends, and I had the nice car, and I had the apartment, and you know, the cool cars, and whatever else I was thinking was important. And you know, it's amazing that we lean into our faith when we need something.
Yeah, yeah.
But rarely do we pray with gratitude as opposed to a request. You know, and for me, that's been a real great lesson for me. But sure, absolutely, there's been times where I thought I was doing it all alone. There was times where I was angry. I was, you know, filled with resentment. You know, why me? How can't, like, how many times you need to give me a kick? 2010 for me was the darkest moment of my life, as you know. 2007, mum and dad separated. 2008, invested basically all her money. And 2008, GFC hit. Lost it all. I had to put her in a caravan park. I failed as a son. I failed the one woman that sacrificed so much of her life for me. And it was a moment where I was so ashamed of the man that I was looking at in the mirror. And then 2009, bacterial meningitis. 2010, Bell's palsy. Had to learn to walk again, talk again, and you know, the prayer that I was praying in 2010 was, let me close my eyes and never wake up. I just didn't want to fight anymore. You know, I remember just lying in hospital and I would say, if you are real, please take me. If I wake up in the morning, I know that you're not real. And now I'm so grateful that he didn't listen. I realize that his plans are far greater than mine.
Asking for gratitude and appreciation, it's just something really powerful shifts in us, right? So powerful. Little listeners may not know about this story with your mum, with like investing everything. Was that more Because obviously your whole story, was that more of a business decision? Was it like a work thing? What was it for you?
So 2000, for those who don't know, like I moved to America when I was 17, scholarship to play baseball, study sports psychology. I was there for 12 months or less than 12 months. Had some more cardiac issues. My career was over. I never played baseball in America again, got sent back to Australia. Did a TV show on Australian Story, and then I got a job in banking. I don't know how, but I got a job in banking. I climbed the corporate ladder very, very quickly. 600 staff, 120 banks around Australia, New Zealand. I was filled with the 3 Ps that destroy people. I was filled with power, privileges, and possessions. Like, that was the 3 Ps that I really lent in on and focused on. I had to have the Armani suits, had to wear the Rolexes. No disrespect to Rolexes, love Rolexes, but the reason why I wanted them is so I could prove my value to other people. Like, it was like my worth was dictated based on what I earned, not what I impacted. And so for me, it was very much just me. And I thought that I knew what was going on. I thought I knew the markets. I thought I knew what was right and what was wrong. And because the money was a very, I guess, not a massive amount, the only way I could really lean in and take care of her, because I had so much debt in Sydney, trying to make myself look bigger than what I really was, that money was not enough. And I didn't have enough money down there to take care of her because I was spending so much on me. And so I thought if I can double it, if I can get a good return on over the next 3 years, then, you know, maybe we'll be right to do something with it. And then within 6 weeks of dropping it in, it was all gone. $11,000 was frozen. That was it. And
Wow.
it just crushed me. And like I said, I was ashamed of who I had become. And I didn't know the market. So theoretically, if you look back on it, I could not take ownership, but it's all me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a guy that likes to take ownership of every single thing that I choose to do. And, you know, I could have just sat it in the bank. There were so many other different options that could have been done, but it was again, it was a really valuable lesson. And I remember saying to her so clearly, I promise you one day I'll make this right. And 8 years later, when the speaking stuff took off, I remember giving her the keys and to a beautiful new home. And I remember saying, I told you I'd make it right. And I'm so glad I can do that now. She thought I rented it for her, but we'd bought it. And I remember we were out the back and she was playing in the garden. And I just looked at myself from the outside in, and I finally became proud of the man that I'd become. And I realized that it's far greater to give than to receive. And in that moment, I finally got to live it, not just speak it.
With everything that happened with you, right? Like, it happened for you. I think it's interesting because when did you decide to be like, okay, I'm going to start empowering people or inspiring or helping people change their perspective? Like, what was your first speaking gig? Like, how did that all come to play, Michael?
Yeah, so 2010 was when I got really sick, like I shared earlier.
Yeah.
And I realized in that moment I just needed to master 2 things. I needed to master what success was, and I needed to master what giving was. And now success, I understand. Success is about how big your heart is. Success is about getting out of bed every day and knowing in your heart that you can make a difference in somebody else's life. If I chase income, then I will grow alone and empty. Yeah. If I chase impact, I think that the fruits of our labor will bless us abundantly. I really also needed to understand this whole gift of giving thing, because I thought it was the more you give, the more you shall receive. But the problem with that is I think what we do in giving is like, I give you something and my expectations are you were going to give me something back. Yeah. We always remember the time that we've helped somebody else out, but very rarely do we reflect on the amount of times they've helped us out, you know? And for me, that's why the orphanage and the school was so powerful, because I knew that they were never going to return the favor. They were never going to do something for me. And that was a really great lesson. And then when I started to speak, it was to schools and chambers and Rotary clubs and anybody and anyone that would listen, because people wanted me to start to share the story. And then all of a sudden it went ballistic. And, you know, we've had hundreds of millions of views now on different videos. And, you know, I just need to stay grounded, like my beautiful wife helps me. I need to stay humble, which, you know, God helps me. And, you know, I realize now that ego is edging God out. So whenever I fall into the ego mode, I know that I'm in the wrong lane. and I need to pull right back.
Yeah.
And my hope is that I can serve people. My hope is that I can make a difference. And like you were saying, if through me sharing my story, I can shift perspectives on people's lives and allow them, to become a father, a better mother, a better friend, a better neighbor, a better son, and that flows on for them to be able to be more effective in the business world and make more money and all that. That's a byproduct.
Yeah.
But my goal is to have them go home and change the way they want to live their life with more amounts of kindness and love and patience and peace. That for me is so key.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people get too caught up in the business world, income, money, status. And I think it's really remembering what's important. Like when I went to Fiji for the first time, we had this beautiful Sunday and we all went to like a little local village. And we just gave so much to the families and everything there. And it was so small because it was just toys. I went there with Gabby as well. And it was just toys. But in their mind, like it was the most beautiful thing we've ever done for them.
Yeah.
Went to schools and it's just really interesting. And I think with Haiti, how did that experience change you? Because that would have been quite incredible to go there and like be there and see that in real life, which people don't actually have the access to, right?
I think when it comes to giving, people, I always say, I'll do that when I get rich.
No.
I'll do that when I've made it. I'll do that when I retire. It must be easy for you because you got lots of money. And I'm like, well, hang on a minute. I went to Haiti when I wasn't even working, when I had no income, but I had a heart to give. And for me, like, it's taking a trolley back. It's mowing someone's lawn. It's sharing a kind note, dropping a text message to somebody. That's giving, that's serving. That just is the tiny little snowball on the top of the mountaintop. But the problem is many people just see the massive snowball that's down the bottom of the mountain and they perceive, when I get down there, that's when I'll make this snowball. But it starts from the top.
Yeah.
And it starts with those little tiny incremental moments of opportunities that you identify that allow you to then start to give. And again, it's not about the materialistic possessions that you give, but it's about the passion in why you give it. And for me, it's about finding opportunities every day to help people, whether it's be nice to somebody that you not normally would talk to, whether it's to give them a note, whether it's to push the trolley back, just simple things that then escalate into being able to do some really cool things. And then, going down to Haiti, heartbreaking, horrific. The smell, in 2011, a year after the earthquake, you'd go past buildings and there'd be bodies still in there. Like it was heartbreaking.
Wow.
The most devastating things you've ever experienced and seen in your life. And now, all these years later, president's been assassinated, the whole country's taken over by gangs. I can't get in and see my kids because we need guys with AK-47s and security like nobody's business just for you to go in. And like, why would I spend all that money when I can give all that money to them to be able to protect them and to be able to support them? And when you do something for somebody that will never be able to return the favor, I love that phrase, the greatest form of giving is anonymous to anonymous. I don't want people to know that I paid for their fuel. I don't want them to know that I paid for their groceries or put Christmas presents under their tree. I just want them to feel loved because someone showed kindness to them.
That's beautiful. That's incredible.
Thanks.
I love interviewing you, Michael, because I always get stuck in your stories. I'm in Haiti. It's yes, it's it's interesting.
I want Jack to do a sound clap again, so he smacks his head on the fan.
Yeah,
that was fun.
I always wonder, right? Like, I look at someone like yourself, Michael. You speak in front of sometimes 10,000 people, and I think it's interesting because firsthand, you wouldn't be able to see the lives that you touch because you're speaking to so many people at once. But I'm curious, like, is there someone that you really touched, like their life in firsthand? You've seen the effect that maybe one simple talk that they attended from Michael Crossland has just changed their whole life.
You get the emotional connections and you get the beautiful messages online and all that sort of stuff that really, they touch your heart. And some days you're doubtful and you don't want to travel and you don't want to be away from your kids and you don't want to be away from your wife and you just think, well, maybe it's easier if I just go and get a 9 to 5, And but yeah, there was this one letter I got in the mail and it started with, I used the rope to play tug of war. And I was like, oh, this is like, it's not, hi, Michael, how are you? It's just the opening line was, I used the rope to play tug of war. And I remember it was a gig in Colorado. And it was actually an event there that the client's like, you know what, we can't afford you. We can't do this, blah, 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 blah. We could probably get you travel because you're already over here. And like, my heart was just, it was all in, and I just wanted to help these. They were students from underprivileged families around that particular area of the state. So I went there and I did this talk, and I remember clearly that, you know, there was this lady in the front row, and she was, you know, had the black stockings on, the white makeup, and you know, a larger young lady. And you know, I went on and did my thing, and she was just so engaged and she was so connected. And then I get this letter and it said, I used the rope to play tug of war. And it said, I just want to let you know, I was the girl that was in the front row with the white makeup and the black stuff on. And I just want to share a little snippet of my life. You know, I was abused horrifically and went into horrible detail. And then the new boyfriend did some horrible things. The mum's new boyfriend did some horrible things. And then when she spoke to her mum about it, you know, the mum just exploded and said, no, that's not right, and kicked her out. So then she's this 17-year-old kid living on the streets in Colorado. And the night before the event, some things occurred and she just had enough. So the next morning when I was speaking, she went to the hardware store and she bought a long rope, and she went back into the hotel room. And as I went to go on, she wasn't in the room. So they went and knocked on her door, and she said, no, I'm not coming down. I'm tired. And they said, no, you're coming down. This guy's come from Australia. You're coming down to hear him speak. So she put the rope down that she'd tied up in the cupboard because she had planned to take her own life. And she heard my story. And then when she went back to her room, you know, I talk a lot about being dealt a certain hand of cards, and it's not about the cards we are dealt, but how we deal with those cards that allow us to live a great life. So she went back and she untied the rope and she went downstairs, and because she was a big girl, she said, let's play tug of war, and everybody wanted her on the team because she was the anchor. So she used the difficult or the perceived challenge in her life as an advantage because everyone wanted her to be on their team. And I think it's just a very strong reminder to all of us that every single one of us, every single day, has an opportunity to change someone's life. And it might just simply be asking, how are you? And listening. Not everybody has a great life, and everybody has a challenge. Everybody has some sort of story, some sort of darkness, some sort of battle. And I realize now that the more we realize that everyone's going through something, then I think we begin to start showing up with more kindness and more grace and more patience and more peace. And that's why always when I'm driving and I get cut off by a driver, normally I'd want to beep the horn, and now I'm like, man, I pray that wherever they need to get to so aggressively, they get there peacefully and on time and everything's okay. They might be racing to the hospital. They might be, you know, have just buried somebody and they're just broken and they want to get home. And you want to add to that grief and that pain by beeping your horn and flipping them off. You know, I just think that the more we are thoughtful and kind to others, the greater our life and the greater other people's lives will be.
Yeah, beautiful. I think with your story, Michael, like obviously a lot of things have curated from like everything you experience, your life, speaking on stage. And I think having a strong family unit, which you do, it's like, what non-negotiables would you have? Would it be quality time that's very important for you? Would it be no phones at dinner? Would be praying together before you guys have dinner? Would be a prayer room? Like, what is it for you?
Yeah, prayer is always key.
Yeah.
I want my house to be centered around prayer and our faith, but there's a lot of non-negotiables in my world. As you know, like I'm always about sauna and ice every day. I make sure I get in the ice bath. I don't want to do it every day. I don't want to do it any day actually, but I know the importance of it. So that is a non-negotiable. We've set up a phone drawer in our house. I really don't want my kids to see my forehead. I want them to see my eyes. And if I'm constantly like this, all they're seeing is this. I want them to feel my soul through my eyes. I know that there is a time when my kids are not going to want to hang out with me. And, you know, they say that when your child turns 12 years old, you've spent 75% of their life with them. You're only going to get 25% more. For the rest of their life, you will get 25% of the rest of their life. My little boy's 8. I never want him to see me on my phone. You know, I want to I want to wrestle with him. I want to read him a book. I want to be so connected. You know, I want to be the greatest influence on his life. You know, and so that is a non-negotiable. You know, reading is a non-negotiable. There's so many things that we implement. You know, I'm very focused on my evening routine. So we make sure the lights are dimmed at 6:30. We make sure that there's no technology after 6:30. We make sure we have the warm cups of tea to warm our soul. We make sure we read to the kids. We tell them bedtime stories. Even when I'm away, I'll zoom in and see their beautiful faces and read them a book from afar. And sometimes that's tricky and tough. But you know, it's a privilege and a responsibility. And that is the greatest gift that I can leave this world, is bringing two beautiful kids with great kindness and great faith into it.
Do you think they know your story? Of your story? Have you told them everything?
My son, who's 8, has started to lean in a little bit more.
Okay.
You know, he's been in the green room quite a few times when I'm speaking.
Wow.
He's actually come out on stage a couple of times, as
Wow.
well as Summer. Summer just thinks like unicorns fly around and she wants to ride horses all day. That's pretty much all she cares about. My son, like he's a deep thinker, and he asks questions that I never thought he would ask. Even today, you know, in the car coming home from our trip away, he asked some questions that were, clearly he's aware of things, you know. And as you know, they're doing a movie on me at the moment, and the trailers come out or the sizzles come out, and he's seen that, and he's like, oh, so in 2022 when you left us, like, that would have been really hard for you, Dad. Like I said, he's a deep thinker.
So what do you think when they can really understand your story, what do you think that you'd like for them to understand?
But the only reason why Daddy leaves and goes away is it's not about putting a roof over their head or food into their tummies. It's not about paying for their school fees or making sure we wear nice clothes. It's because God gave me a remarkable gift, and that was to overcome great challenges that this world throws at me, to be able to inspire others to look at life differently and realize that regardless of the cards they've been dealt and the pain and the suffering that they may experience, that if you wake up tomorrow morning, if you can look at that day with an immense amount of gratitude and joy, then the opportunities that will open up and your ability to cope more effectively will be so much greater and so much more rewarding. Like, my goal is to not achieve great things whilst I'm here. My goal is to leave a legacy and ensure that those things live on far longer than I'm ever going to be here on this earth.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Michael.
Pleasure. Nice to have you in our home.
Thanks for having me.